Just send that.
So Ellis should have received an email with an invitation. Yes?
Yeah, it might be an email or a like Google notification. I'll
Piper?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So
Ellis
I
just trying
think
to connect, I think.
I think Eugene can present first.
Okay.
If Eli is not there, Eugene can present his work first.
Great, sounds good.
If that's. Let me share my screen.
So
Yeah, you
just
can
gonna follow along as.
Yeah.
Should I just tell them when to change slides then?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
So
I just reset the whole.
Piper, did you get Eugene's presentation?
He sent it to me. Can we just share the presentation from your side?
Yeah.
I think that might be the best way. I do have Eugene's presentation just in case.
Yeah, but I'm going to share my screen with you.
Wonderful.
And
hi, come on.
Okay. So we have this. Okay. So whenever you are ready, we are ready, actually. Right.
Yeah, why don't we just wait 2 minutes, just because people are late in line.
Okay. So, it's okay.
I think 2 minutes grace period might be a good idea.
Yeah. And meanwhile, what we can do, we can.
Could you just start by telling us about the course that these projects were a result of?
Okay. Just give me 1 second.
Sure.
I'm just telling Ela that she can join whenever she wants because Eugene is ready. Okay.
Sounds good.
Let me say something about this. Okay. So basically, it was last semester.
Yes.
I can introduce myself first.
Yes, please.
I'm Vijay, and I teach here some graduate courses, some undergraduate courses. And before joining Troy University, I worked with Piper, Philip, Wahid, and others at MoCSSy and Airmax for 2 years. Then I moved to USA on NIH and NSF grant and worked with Dr. Santosh Kumar in his lab at University of Memphis. So, but I worked there for just 6 months and then I got this position. So I started teaching this graduate course last year, right?
Yes.
Last year or so. And I thought that, okay, I should introduce modeling and simulation to my graduate students. So this is what we were doing at MoCSSy, and this is what I learned over there. And so we discussed some discrete event simulation models, and some continuous models, like using partial partial differential equations and cellular automata-based modeling approaches. So in that course, basically, I taught MATLAB and modeling aspects from biology, right?
Yes.
From biology. So, and these were the projects. Eugene's project was about this
It's
spread
rumor
of
spreading in social media or social networks.
spread of rumors,
Mm.
and this is what he's going to present today. And Ila's project is about HIV,
Yeah,
and
using
it's
cellular
based
automata.
on cellular automata. So
Thank you so very much. I look forward to hearing the presentation.
yeah, so I think Eugene can introduce himself first, and then we can go ahead.
Hello, my name's Eugene Belly. I'm currently a graduate student at Troy University, and I'm going to be talking about this work that I did with Dr. Mago. And essentially, it's using the SIR model of epidemic spreading in order to simulate the spread of rumors over a social media network. The main difference between this particular model and other models is that we try to assess the impact of education on trends of rumor spreading. And the way that we do that is by correlating education with technological proficiency and being able to use social media networks in order to spread rumors. Presentation.
Okay, so I can share my screen now,
Yes, please.
and Eugene can. Where is that now? Okay.
Okay, so the structure of the presentation, I'll be introducing the work, going over recent related works, discussing the methodology, experimentation, and then discussing how education affects the rumor spreading, as well as possible future applications or modifications to the current model. So in general, rumors refer to unverified accounts or explanations of events circulating from person to person. Oftentimes, people don't consider or research heavily into whether rumor is true or false. It's just spread. The objective of this paper is basically to conduct a numerical simulation using an epidemic model for the spread of a rumor over a population. We use mathematical models and derived mean field equations to accomplish this. We'll discuss these and the methodology. Basically, we base our model on two classical models. Heavily into whether it's true or false. It's just spread. The objective of this paper is basically to conduct a numerical simulation using the epidemic model for the spread of a rumor over a population. We're having some audio feedback. Give us just a moment, please. You know what that was?
I don't know.
I think probably Ayla's muted her microphone now, so it should be.
Hello.
Okay. I think there was a microphone might have been the issue there. She just logged in here.
Okay.
So. Where is
That's the other one. And
okay, so we take a look at two classical models. to base our work off of, the Daly-Kendall model and the Maki-Thompson model, which are both inspired by the SIR model. SIR meaning susceptible, infected, and removed. The total population is partitioned into these three groups, and the model is describing rates of change in these groups, the movement of populations from one group to another group. The DK model is a homogeneously mixed model, and rumors propagated through the population by pairwise contacts between spreaders and others in the population. The behavior of this rumor spreading model follows the law of mass action, and any spreader involved in pairwise meetings attempts to infect other individuals with the rumor. The way that the Maki-Thompson model is very similar. However, the way that it differs is that spreaders only contact other spreaders, and when they do, the model is configured to where only the initial spreader becomes a stifler. A stifler being an individual who chooses not to spread the rumor even though they know it. There are several modifications to this model, one in particular being the SI-HR model. A hibernator is essentially a person who is infected but is in a state where they don't spread the infection. One main difference between these models and the other models is that there is a path from the stifler group to the ignorant group, whereas in other models, the stifler group is a terminal group. When an individual becomes a stifler, they can no longer become a spreader or infected. There's also research done to show how two different groups of two different rumors affect each other's trends. This is the 2SI2R model. Okay, now our particular methodology, we take the SIR model and we divide the two groups, the ignorant and the spreader groups, into subgroups, the uneducated and educated ignorant and spreaders. So again, ignorant people are those who are unaware of the rumor, spreaders are those who spread the rumor, and stiflers are those who are aware of the rumor but choose not to spread it. Each of the factors in the model represent, or each of the symbols in the model represents a factor by which the rate of change occurs. Here's a basic description of these factors. The rate at which ignorance change to spreaders can be represented by lambda, and essentially if an ignorant individual does not become a spreader, they will become a stifler by a rate of 1 minus lambda. If you consider the uneducated and educated populations, then lambda is partitioned into uneducated lambda and educated lambda, lambda U and lambda E. So the delta is the rate at which a spreader loses interest in the rumor. So essentially they forget it. The gamma is the rate at which spreader will change to stifler when they have doubt about the rumor. This can be if a spreader encounters a stifler in the population and the stifler changes the opinions of the spreader. And eta is the probability at which a spreader will turn into a stifler without encountering spreaders or stiflers. And these are the mean field equations we have derived from the previous model. Each of these, for example, if we look at equation 1, you can see the rate of change of the ignorant groups. These are divided into the uneducated and educated groups. Each group has a factor k, which represents the degree of the network, and the P sub U represents the population of the uneducated, P sub E population of educated. To discuss the experimentation of the model, we essentially set up an initial condition where the SR rumor spreading model is a three-dimensional vector that is input into the model. And we use ordinary differential equations to solve these, to solve the equations and plot the graphs. The particular method that we use is the Runge-Kutta method, fourth order differential equation solver. The chart on the left is a chart that shows all the input values that we use for our model. We use the population of Sudan, which according to the wrong source. Basically, it's said that it is cited that 79% of Sudanese population do not use internet or social media technologies, and 21% do. So this is how we assign values for educated and uneducated individuals. This directly affects the degree of the network, which is why the uneducated individuals have a degree of 6, meaning that on average we're assuming that an uneducated individual will have 6 meaningful interactions socially throughout the day where they can spread a rumor. Whereas for educated populations where information can be obtained through social media or other outlets on the internet, this average degree turns to 35. We look at the model over a period of 10 days and essentially gauge how the education affects, the change of education and change in delta values affects the rate of change in the model. So this first graph is just looking at all of the factors, or all of the groups: ignorant, educated, uneducated, spreader, uneducated, and stiflers over the course of 10 days. Here we can see that the majority of the change begins to occur on the 4th day. This is because the Sudanese population that we're looking at is 37 million, and it's hard to see, since the changes occur at an exponential rate, it's hard to see those changes in the first few days, whereas they make more and more intense impact as time progresses. By the 10th day, the model reaches a steady state with just under 96.8% of the total population being stiflers. We'll look at each of these curves individually. So here are the educated and uneducated ignorant individuals. Notice that the starting values correlate to the P sub E and P sub U, the subsections of the population. Due to a vastly greater population of uneducated, ignorant individuals, there is a greater impact in the model by uneducated, and the peak trend of the educated individuals occurs earlier in the time span of the model. So you can see that in the educated individuals, this occurs between the 3rd and 4th day, and the uneducated between the 4th and 5th day. And this can be largely attributed to the degree of the network, which accelerates all the trends in the model. This effect can be seen in these curves as well. Essentially the same trend occurs between the 3rd and 4th day, is where the majority of the change occurs in the educated population, between the 4th and 5th day and the uneducated. And the peak of the model is correlated with the total population that was in those groups. And the rate of change of the stiflers is largely dependent on both its own population as well as the population of spreaders and ignorant individuals. So essentially, as the number of stiflers grows, the number of stiflers that come into contact with spreaders also grows. And the same with spreaders. So essentially, as both groups grow, the stiflers' rate of change will continue to increase until the model begins to run out of spreaders. So we'll discuss the effects of changing delta, or the forgetting rate, in the model. So here's the impact of the forgetting rate on the ignorant individuals. So the value of delta can be seen to have basically the most noticeable effect is a shrinkage in both uneducated and educated individuals. These figures show that for both groups, as the value of delta increases, the population of ignorant individuals shrinks less and more slowly. This is because delta directly affects the rate at which spreaders become stiflers. This, by extension, stunts the growth of the spreader populations. And the stunning of the growth of the spreaders causes a shrinkage of ignorant populations. So for educated ignorant, the general rate of shrinkage is faster for all respective values of delta than for uneducated ignorant populations. And the directive effect of delta on both populations, however, is the same, with the highest value of delta showing the slowest shrinkage and lowest value of delta showing the fastest shrinkage. Here we can see an effect which is very similar to that of the ignorant populations, and a higher value of delta correlates to a lower peak of the spreaders in the model, because the delta value increases the rate, a higher delta value increases the rate at which spreaders become stiflers, and this stunts the overall growth of the group. Now the value of delta can have a unexpected, or I guess non-intuitive, effect on the peak population of stiflers, and that the higher value of delta actually lessens the total population percentage of stiflers. This is because the size of the stifler group is dependent on the sizes of the spreader groups. Since a larger delta value stunts the spreader growth, it also limits the shrinkage of the ignorant group. Because of this, there's a lower total number of stiflers at the end of the model for higher values of delta, and a higher ignorant, percentage of ignorant people which never learned the rumor to begin with. So we're going to discuss the impacts of education on the model, and in order to do that, we're going to look at two other countries' populations. These will be Russia and the Czech Republic. In Russia, the percentage of the uneducated and educated is very even, whereas in the Czech Republic is essentially the inverse of Sudan, where there's more educated and less uneducated. So the time frame for the changes in the model are very different for the educated and uneducated groups because of the effects of education, that being increasing the degree of the network. The changes in the educated groups occur much faster than the changes in the uneducated groups. Here we can see that all the changes in the educated occur within the first 5 days, whereas it takes between 20 and 30 days for the majority of the changes in the uneducated groups to occur. These are the trends for the three individual groups: ignorant, spreader, and stiflers for the Czech Republic. Here we can once again see that the educated and uneducated occur at totally different time frames because of the degree of the network, and because there's basically because of the rate of change in the spreader model, the stiflers don't see a change until see majority of the change in the first 5 days. In Russia, we can see the majority of the shrinkage in the ignorant group occurs on the second day, and in the educated group, or in the uneducated between the second and fourth day, and then the educated between the 8th and the 10th day. Basically, By the time the uneducated ignorant group begins shrinking, the stifler group is already nearing 50% of the population. This large number of stiflers causes a small stunt in the total growth of the uneducated spreaders, and thus slightly lessens the overall shrinkage of the ignorant population. Okay. So essentially, we can see that education levels have a significant impact on both the propagation rate and the impact of the rumor. We model this by taking into account individuals' technological proficiency, which impacts the model by changing the degree of each node. We can see in the model that the educated ignorant population shrinks more rapidly and the educated spreader grows and peaks more rapidly given education. Also, we can see in the stifler group of the Czech Republic, as opposed to Russia and Sudan stifler groups, where the greater education percentage is correlated with more rapid growth in the stiflers. The impact of countries, educated and uneducated groups on the total population is attributed to the ratio of educated to uneducated. In Sudan, the ratio of uneducated individuals greatly outnumbered the ratio of educated individuals. Therefore, the majority of the trends can be attributed to the uneducated groups. In Russia, the peak percentages of both groups are nearly identical because this ratio is 1-to-1. In the Czech Republic, the ratio is the inverse of Sudan's, and you can see that educated populations have a much greater impact. One thing that would be interesting to see as a result of this work is, or basically as an add-on to this work, is continuous levels of education. Perhaps putting these levels on a range could give a more descriptive model for actual populations. Here there would be a range of education as opposed to categories. Also, factors can be considered such as preference and social technologies to communicate. Another interesting thing might be to consider a model with different types of rumors with pertinence to different sections of the population. Here, these different rumors could have less relevance to different groups, and there could be a factor of co-relevance defined between two groups for the same rumor. In conclusion, this work proposes an SSIRR model, which is a variation of the SIR epidemic model. And this model takes into account education levels of a population on spreading of a rumor. Mean field equations are derived to describe the dynamics of the rumor spreading process, and the effect of the rate at which individuals forget the rumor is also considered. Therefore, we create better models to predict trending of future rumors. We show that education has a great effect on the circulation rate of a rumor as well as the lifespan of a rumor, and that same results indicate greater forgetting rate correlated with the higher peak value of spreaders in the model, but a lower total value of individuals who have known the rumor by the end of the cycle. These results help researchers better understand how factors affect trends within the life cycle of a rumor, and therefore create better models to predict trending of future rumors. Are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present.
So viewers who are logged in, any questions?
Okay. Okay, so we do have one question from Philippe Giovanelli, a much esteemed former MoCSSy member. Yeah. Okay, so I have it here. You can if you're logged into Hangouts, you can leave it in the text, or you can email me, piper@ermax.sfu.ca. That works. So I'm just going to read Philippe's question. It looks to me that educated and uneducated is not so much actually about education. Rather, it is about social capital. That is the number of people or abstract entities that you get information from. Education may be less about the number of sources, but more about how you filter what comes in. For example, two individuals may have the same social capital, but you expect a more educated one to process information differently. So just to kind of perhaps rephrase what Philippe is saying is that I mean, it sounds like there's two things here. Like, first of all, social capital might be a better term than education to describe um, what you're considering in this model. And on top of that, that you could include education as the ability to, or sorry, as the capacity for people to filter between true and true statements and rumors. Um, how does that sound to you?
I mean, that sounds very reasonable. There could be a factor defined as to the likeliness of a person to accept a rumor as the truth, and that could be correlated with education as opposed to correlating education with the degree of a network. So it makes sense that these concepts should be separate, I guess. When you put it like that, it does make sense.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that it isn't interesting to look at it only considering one of those.
No, I understand.
Factors, right? I think it's always interesting to consider different degrees of detail in the model.
Yes.
I have one question. I wasn't sure from the presentation. Did you notice a difference in terms of total rumor spread based on the education level of a country? So,
Total rumor spread?
yeah, so I mean, one would hope that if you have a country that has more educated people, that rumors would spread less. But maybe that's not the case. I don't know.
I mean, in our model, there doesn't really seem to be a significant impact. There is, for the Czech Republic, for example, the criminal, in a steady state, the percentage of individuals who knew the rumor by the end of the model were less than the percentage of individuals who didn't. So essentially, this means that there were more people who never learned the model or never learned the rumor, and the life cycle of the spreaders was shorter because of the education. Basically, this is less attributed to, or basically more attributed to, a shortening of the life cycle and a increase in speed of the cycle, if that makes sense.
Right, and I think that might, and that's the source of perhaps the rumors not getting spread as much, right? I mean, maintaining a large population of people who are ignorant of a rumor is probably a good thing.
Yes.
Right? Great. Do you have any questions? Okay. Do we have any more? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Eugene. That was really interesting. I mean, I'm a big fan of SIR because it's such a simple model, but it's applicable to so many different phenomena. As we saw last year, we had somebody who was looking at SIR for child pornography websites and how to break down those networks. So using SIR to look at as a means of stopping that kind of problem. So, but this is again, a radically different topic, but SIR is still, I think a good starting place. So thank you very much.
Definitely. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so let's try and get Yella going. She
is online.
Okay, great.
Not sure if we can hear her though.
Well, if we click, I think if you click on her, it will walk up to. There we go. Oh.
Can you hear us, Ella?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we see if they're up here? Okay.
All right. So the topic that I'm presenting today is regarding HIV simulation within a human body. And let me see if I can get this. So do I just, can you see my screen yet?
No, I think you're going to have to share.
Okay, just a moment. Okay.
Oh, okay, something's happening. Good. Great.
Can you all see?
Yes.
Okay, great. So So our topic is exploring the relationship between adherence to treatment for HIV and viral load using discrete simulation. I worked on this group project with Philip, who's also here, and two of my classmates, Naga and Xiaoyu, as well as Dr. Mago. Just the ones. Okay. So I'll start with the introduction and give you kind of a background about HIV and the model that we're using, and then we'll go on to the different types of models and the results that we saw with the models and results that we saw with treatment. So HIV, of course, has been a large problem throughout the world for many decades now. The World Health Organization statistics showed that in just 2013 alone, there were 1.5 million deaths and 35 million people were living with HIV. Research for HIV is, of course, a very active field since there are so many people around the world who are infected with this disease. And different types of treatment and different types of methods of understanding this disease better is being researched right now. Simulation and modeling is also one of those types of methods that we're using. We're using this to understand the disease process better and to understand to study different types of treatment methods better as well. So a lot of different research that has looked into simulation of HIV are mostly divided into continuous simulation research and discrete simulations, out of which some that have made a large impact on HIV research are the works by Granic et al. And Kaplan. Granic, of course, studied the system dynamics model, as you can see. He looked into consequences of universal testing of HIV, which was followed by antiretroviral therapy. And Kaplan looked at HIV prevalence amongst injection drug users and found that and studied whether it could be reduced by using needle exchange programs. In the field of discrete simulations, we have various researchers who've studied social network models and discrete Markov chains to examine the spread of HIV amongst injection drug users. And much work has also been done on cellular automata to look into how HIV spreads within a human body. So the main contributions that we made from our paper is we developed discrete simulation models to the dynamics of HIV. We did this by using incremental models, beginning with a model that doesn't use any kind of therapy to a model that uses single and dual therapy. We use these models to investigate how the medications change the dynamics of HIV, and we also look at how adherence to medication affects the spread of the virus as well. So to begin with an understanding of the disease process, we'll first take a look at the biology of the disease and the model that we're using. You all may already be familiar with a basic idea of HIV, but just in case for anyone who doesn't know, HIV is, of course, a virus that attacks our immune system, primarily our T cells, which are one of the types of immune cells that are the number one, that are the main that the HIV attacks the most. Amongst T cells, it may attack different types, such as the CD4, CD8, as well as dendritic cells. But for this research, we're mainly considering just basic CD4 cells. So when HIV infects a large number of T cells or CD4 cells, our immune system over time becomes unable to replenish the loss of the cells. And over years, this can lead to the person becoming immunodeficient, which leads to the AIDS stage, the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome stage. And that's our main reason for concern with HIV, because that is the stage that is when the patient is symptomatic and they're having difficulty with leading their daily lives. So the disease initially begins with its acute stage. The acute stage lasts for about 4 to 6 weeks, and it's just feels like a basic flu-like symptoms. Person may not even be symptomatic, but usually symptoms are confused with a generic disease such as flu. After this, the cells go to a latent stage in which HIV is detected by the immune system, so the virus cannot act as acutely. So in this stage, patients are usually asymptomatic. And this stage lasts for many years. It can be from 4 to about 10 years, depending from person to person. And at the end of this stage, HIV will have increased enough to cause AIDS, and that is our last stage, the AIDS stage. In this stage, we see the body suffering from the simplest infections that usually would not affect a healthy human body very much, suddenly start to become much stronger. These infections can attack the HIV patient's body much easier, and they cannot be treated as well because the immune system is starting to fail. So the chief form of treatment that we use for HIV is antiretroviral therapy. Antiretroviral therapy involves many different medications, and usually most of these medications are meant to stop a specific phase in virus replication within our human body. The virus goes through many phases when it's replicating, which involves it replicates within a CD4 cell. So it begins by binding to a CD4 cell, fusing with it in order to enter and release its RNA into the CD4 cell. Inside the CD4 cell, it uses reverse transcription to convert its RNA into DNA, and it embeds its own DNA into the human DNA, and by this method, it kind of hides within the CD4 cell. And after a while, it releases its DNA again, and and then converts it to RNA again using the cells, the CD4 cells proteins and resources. And this is the process called transcription. And after that, it assembles a new cell using the CD4 cell materials again, and releases itself out of the CD4 cell membrane, taking some of the membrane with it to form its own cell wall. And once it's released, it moves on and goes and infects other cells. So the ART medications are designed to stop each of these phases, and most of the time the patients are put on multiple therapy. so that it stops different steps of the virus replication to get a better effect at stopping the HIV. As for a modeling background, the model that we're using for this research is cellular automaton. You all may be familiar with it again since this is a simulation meeting, so I won't go into details. Of course, cellular automata is a grid with a cell surrounded by certain neighbors, and depending on different rules, rules regarding the neighbors, the cell updates itself and may turn from one state to another. CAs can be of many different types of shapes, sizes, and dimensions. For our research, we're using a two-dimensional square grid. So each cell has 8 neighbors around it, just as you can see in the figure. So each cell will have all these different 8 neighbors around it. For CA modeling of HIV, there have been many other studies done as well. Santos and Coutinho in 2001 created the first novel cellular automata that could that could reproduce the 3-stage dynamics of HIV. Then there was Shi et al. Study, which looked into viral load-based cellular automata, and this one looked at antiretroviral therapy as well. Richaratna et al. Looked at leukapheresis treatment. Another work by Richaratna and Triampo in 2014 looked at infection dynamics in not only CD4 cells, but also CD4 dendritic and CD8 cells. Gonzalez et al. Studied dual medication treatment at different effectiveness, looking at, they modified the treatment effectiveness and the treatment time to see how it affects the therapy. And Moonchai et al. Looked at virus behavior in both blood and lymph node, while most other research only looked at lymph nodes. So we begin with our 3 models. We start with a model with no therapy, then move on to a single therapy, and finally dual therapy. So we have 3 models that we're designing, and they form our basis for studying adherence to treatment later on as well. So our first model is going to be a model for HIV virus with no antiretroviral therapy. So this is just a simplified model that shows how HIV cells infect its neighbors and keep growing within a cell, within a human body. And we're mainly looking at lymph nodes, and each cell in our cellular automata grid it represents a CD4 cell of the human body. And so the state of each cell can be in 4 possible states. It can either be healthy, which is a healthy state is just a regular CD4 cell that has not been infected. Then it can go through 2 infected states, acute infected state and latent infected state. Acute infected stage is a virus that is in a more active stage. At this point, the virus has not been detected by the immune system yet, and so it can infect more freely, and that it is able to infect more neighbors and spread infection faster. Latent infected state is the state that the infected cell goes through after it has been detected by the immune system. Because because the immune system has already kicked in, the cells go into a less active stage, and they can still grow and spread the disease, but a little much slower at a much less pace. And finally, we have dead cells. After the cells go through the acute infected and the latent infected stage, after a certain amount of time, it becomes a dead cell and will later be replaced by a healthy cell again in the future. So these are the rules for our first model. Rule 1 states the transition of a healthy cell to an infected stage. And Rule 2 speaks of the conversion of an acute infected cell to a latent infected cell. Rule 3 speaks of the transition of a latent infected cell to a dead state. And finally, the dead state is replaced again by a healthy or an infected cell in Rule 4. So we look at the first rule, and the first rule states that the healthy cell becomes infected if there is a probability of infection by neighbors, and if the neighbor rule is met. And here, the letter N here stands for neighborhood consisting of. So the neighborhood will consist of at least one greater than equal to 1 I1 cells, or if the neighbor consists of greater than or equal to X neighbors in I2 stage, then that cell will become infected. So what this means is that a healthy cell will become infected if it has at least one acute cell neighbor or X latent infected cell neighbors. The reason that it takes, and the value of X here that we use is 4, which we've looked into previous studies, and that's where we got that value from. So if it has 4 neighbors in latent infected stage, only then can it become infected. But from an acute infected cell, it only needs 1 neighbor for it to become infected. But even if the neighbors are present, it still only gets infected with a probability PI, probability of being infected. Most of the time it will be infected, so we're using a very high probability, which is 0.997. Again, these values are being obtained from previous research. There's also the chance of it being there's also a chance of a virus particle from outside the neighborhood traveling to the cell and infecting it, and this probability is PV, which is the probability of a virus particle from outside the neighborhood coming in. So if all these conditions are met, only then can a healthy cell become infected, and it goes into acute infected stage. After it is acute infected, Rule 2 states that it can become latent infected after tau1 time. So tau1 is just the number of weeks after which an acute cell transitions to a latent cell. For tau1, we're using the value 4 from previous research again. And then after tau2 time, which is 1 week, it converts to a dead state. And finally, dead state cells can turn back into a healthy cell with the probability of replacement. So P-rep just means the probability of replacement by a new cell. And it can also become, the newly converted H cell can also become infected with a probability of probability replacement times probability of replacement by infected. So those are our rules. And I don't know why, but the, the figure has not, the values in the figures are missing. So let me go to the Model 2 figure and show you from there. So that these states were supposed to be H, I1, I2, and D, but for some reason, I don't know why the technical issue, but with the PDF, it didn't show up here. But so healthy, based on Rule 1, turns into I1, and then to I2, and finally to dead. So the healthy to acute infected to latent infected to dead, and then it returns back to either healthy or infected stage. And these are all the parameters that we're using for our model. I've already spoken about some of these, but I'll speak more as we go into Model 2 and 3. So Model 2...
Can I interrupt? I just want to let you know we only have about 7 minutes left. So
oh, okay. Sorry. Sure. I'll...
No, sure. Just please continue.
Yeah.
But,
right. So Model 2 is similar to Model 1, but now it's introducing antiretroviral therapy. So this model uses single antiretroviral therapy, and let's go over. So we have the same states in Model 2 as we had in Model 1, but we have one additional state, which is healthy with therapy. And healthy with therapy is just a healthy cell that is receiving therapy. The healthy cells in this model are split into H and H with T, the healthy with therapy, or the HT. And again, the rules remain the same as Model 1, but the first rule is changed. Previously, the first rule in the original Model 1 rule stated that the H cell would be converted to I1 cell. In this case, the H can also be converted to a healthy with therapy state, depending on the probability of being on therapy, which is PT right here in Rule 1A. And the therapy also checks if time step is greater than equal to TH start, which means therapy has started. Other than this, most of the other rules are the same. And again, Rule 5 is the transition of a cell that is in healthy with therapy state back to either healthy or infected. So it becomes infected with a probability of PINFT, which is probability of infection while being on therapy, as long as it meets all the other requirements that were required for infection from our first model, which was PI and the neighbors constraint, as well as probability of a random virus. And if it does not become infected and it is no longer receiving therapy, which means it is no longer has the probability PT, then it turns back into a regular healthy cell, an H cell. And then finally, we have Model 3. Model 3 uses dual therapy. So this is, again, similar to Model 2. We have extra states for healthy with therapy. In this case, we have healthy with therapy 1, healthy with therapy 2 for our 2 different therapies, as well as healthy with therapy both if it is receiving both therapies. So each cell can receive either one medication or 2 or both combined. And based on that, the first rule changes. The rule of infection, the rule for the transition of an H cell is to these 4 rules. So healthy cell can either receive therapy 1, therapy 2, or both therapy, depending on whether there is probability of 1 or 2 or both, and as long as the therapy has already begun. And again, for this model, we have transition from the therapy states back to healthy states as well. As we can see here, healthy with therapy 1, 2, and healthy with both therapies will either transition back to a healthy state, Or if there's only probability of the other therapy, then it could transition to the other therapy. So HT1 could transition to 2 or 2 to 1. If the probability of being on therapy 1 no longer exists, then healthy with therapy 1 would become healthy with therapy 2 instead. And if there is probability of no therapy at all at this state, then the healthy with therapy 1 or the healthy with therapy 2 can all become infected and become I1 as long as the neighbor constraint is met. So that's pretty much an overview of our rules for the third model. So when we ran our simulations, we saw all these we saw many different observations. This is the actual simulation for our first model. We see that initially in the first few weeks, the virus grows much faster, as you can see. I don't have a legend here, but the healthy cells are green, and the blue cell regions that you see are the infected regions. They grow freely without being stopped by the immune system, as they have not been detected yet. After week 4, the immune system kicks in, and the acute infected cells start to turn into latent infected and then to dead cells. As you can see here, by the light blue turning into dark blue and then black for dead. And this simulation is for week 7. After a few more weeks, all the cells start to clear up as the immune system functions more, and we start to see the cells reducing a lot to a very small number. And finally, we have a very low infection count again, which is shown by the very few light blue cells here in this simulation. After this, the virus goes into the latent stage, and so the HIV disease progresses very slowly over many years. It grows very slowly over years, and after about 8 years, it starts to grow more, and here we see at 10 years that it's finally grown to a much larger amount, where you would expect symptoms to start showing up for AIDS. And here's the graph of Model 1. So what we found was that the virus goes through our simulation results show that the virus goes through the same 3 stages as we would expect in the biological studies, which is the first phase where right at the beginning, you can see right after the 0 at the beginning, for the first 4 to 8 weeks, we see that the light blue cells go really high, the light blue and dark blue cells. That represents the acute infection growing very high, and then after that, it goes back down to a very low, and for many, many years after that, it stays low. Our x-axis shows our value in time in weeks, and our y-axis shows the count of healthy cells, acute infected cells, latent, and dead cells. So as we can see, these cells grow at a much slower pace after this initial spike in fall is over. And this represents exactly how we would expect it to occur in biology. So that's what's significant about this result, is that it represents just how the 3-phase dynamics of HIV is seen in the real biological research. So that is why this, since this graph accurately represents it, our cellular automata model can accurately represent how HIV grows within our cell. Next, we move on to the single therapy, and in this case, we see the HIV continues to grow just as it did in the first model, but it grows much more sparsely. So compared to Model 1, where the light blue and dark blue spots are just form large regions. Here they grow, in Model 2, they grow much more sparse. And the graph of Model 2 also shows that if we look at the healthy count and the infection count, the infection count is much lower after the 600-week period, which is about 11 and a half years, compared to our first model where the infection count was much higher. You may note that the new red line that we see in this model is the healthy with therapy model state, and our healthy cells here are divided into healthy with therapy, red, and healthy, green. Model 3, again, we implemented the same thing for 2 therapies this time, and we saw that the therapy with two therapies, the virus grows even more sparse, as you can see in this figure. And here is our graph results for Model 3, and you can see that the infection count is very, very low, even after 600 weeks, which is 11 and a half years. So we see that dual therapy works even better and has a better effect on keeping the viral load down for the HIV cells. Finally, we looked at adherence, medication adherence. Medication adherence, of course, is a big problem with HIV patients. People who are infected with HIV have to take medication therapy for their entire lives. And because of this reason, we almost never see full adherence to medication therapy in these patients. So we felt that would be something very important that we need to look into in our research, and that's what we're looking at here. So we started with the second model and looked at how the effect of decreased adherence plays on the cell count for infected cells and healthy cells. And if we compare the value of our regular Model 2 with full adherence to decreased adherence, which is here we have an adherence of 90%, which means that the patient is only taking medication 90% of the time, then you see that infected cells are, as you have a lower adherence to therapy, infected cells grow higher, at a much higher pace. And you'll see that at the end of the 600 weeks, you'll see they're at a much higher level compared to when they have a higher adherence value. So here you have 90% adherence, and if you compare it to 70% adherence and then to 50% adherence, you see a large difference in the infected cell count, as well as the healthy cell count. You'll see that the healthy cell count goes lower much faster, and much more.
Okay. I'm going to have to cut you off there, Ella.
Okay.
Is there anything you'd like to say quickly in conclusion?
No, just yeah. This was our main result with our adherence studies, and that's what's most significant about our project, because previous research had not looked at the effect of adherence on HIV. And medication adherence, of course, is a big issue right now, and pretty much that was what was novel in our project, and we're just that's pretty much.
That's very interesting. If you could email me your presentation, I would love to take a closer look at it, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry for taking up too much time.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's a very interesting model, and there's lots of questions I'd like to ask, but I think we'll have to wrap up here because we're past time.
Sure.
I'd like to thank both of you very much for sharing such fascinating models with us. It was great to do this online thing.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Piper. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, everybody's okay. So thank you very much, and I hope to talk to you guys again sometime. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.